Okay, we've started the build. What do you see as very different from our previous builds?
There's a lot that's different building in Belize.
Hello, I'm Chad,
And I'm Grace.
and this is our dog Queen.
And together we are
Two gringos and a dingo.
I think one of the things that surprised me most about building a house here is how much is done with manual labor. There's very little machinery so far on a day-to-day basis of building our house.
So far, we've only worked on the foundation,
Correct.
and and we would have expected heavy equipment excavating everything.
Correct.
And to some extent, they brought that in.
True. There was some.
But there was 7 or 8 people on site with shovels doing most of the work,
Right.
most of the time.
Correct.
We're in a neighborhood where there are no post office boxes.
Correct.
We're in a neighborhood that has power and water, but the connections weren't there yet.
Correct.
So the very first thing they did was build a post for the power and water supply.
Right.
The very next thing they did was put in a septic tank.
That's correct. And we've never been on a septic tank before, so this is all new to us. But the very first thing they did was the septic tank.
Yeah.
And then another thing that was different for building down here is we had to do these piers. And that was a new process for me. They're going very deep, anywhere between 25 and 30 feet down, and putting concrete post for your foundation to sit on.
Now, and that's because we were on reclaimed land.
Yes.
So the land we were on, to make it clear what reclaimed land is, it was marshy. And the lagoon was either on it or near it or around it. And they dredged out the lagoon and they piled it up, and that became the land.
That's correct. So
And-
it's filled.
And so you can dig down pretty deep and you're not going to hit bedrock.
No.
So what they do is they drilled in, and I think they're 31 foot deep where we are, and it can be up to 41. I looked at the machine and it goes up to 40, but I think we went to 31 feet deep. And there were 20 some odd piers, piles that they put in. They would dig it, and it was like a giant auger.
Yes.
And as the auger spun, it would bring the dirt up. And we had 4 or 5 people around with shovels and hose, and they were pulling the dirt off of the auger where it could keep spinning.
Right. Big old drill.
Yeah.
Post a picture of it.
And they go in and they do cinder blocks. And the cinder blocks go on the outline of the foundation.
Correct.
And they're just mixing concrete, sometimes on the ground, sometimes in
Just by hand.
wheelbarrows, and then they put it in buckets, they carry it over and they pour it in, and that's how they do the mortar, and that's how they fill between the cinder blocks.
We used 8-inch size cinder blocks for the complete foundation, and those cinder blocks went up 4 feet.
Yeah, and now that's outside of the piers, and then they do beams that they hand build. They bring rebarb in,
Straight rebarb.
and they out there with hand tools, and they bend these rebarbs into cages,
Right.
or whatever shape they need it to be. But
And wire them together.
for the beams, it's a cage with 4 or 5 rebarbs in a line, and then they're tied together.
And we chose to backfill. We did you can have a crawl space underneath your foundation, underneath your slab, but we didn't want the crawl space, so it's backfilled with sand and dirt, and so we will not have a crawl space. I didn't want a crawl space. It's a place for creepy crawlies to crawl into, I think. So
They call it a crawl space for a reason.
no crawl space, please.
Those can be handy storage areas, but you really don't know what's crawling around in there.
I'm not going to go down in there. So I was like, nope. They're building the pool at the same time they're building the house. It's the same builder. And in the States, you have a pool company. usually that kind of does the pool. They're kind of in charge of the pool. But here the builders will build the pool along with your house at the same time. And your pool is built where part of the foundation is the pool part.
So
it's not they're not considered above ground pools. They are in the ground, but they're not in the ground as far down as in the States, because your foundation comes up 4 feet. You want your pool to be level with the foundation, otherwise you got that big drop. So it's a little different.
Well, and you also have a water table that's 2 feet below ground.
That's true.
So
you have to mitigate against that.
So if you're digging more than 2 feet, you're just shoveling water.
That's true.
When they bring the cement trucks in, they'll bring a big boom
A pump truck, right?
pump truck, yeah, that can reach a great distance. Those things can reach over your house if they need to. And they will start the concrete trucks spinning, and they'll dump into the little pump pool, and then the pump truck will take it out and put it where they need it. And so there were a number of places, not where the piers were, but where they have footings that they would put in. And they would go from one footing to the next, and they couldn't stop the concrete.
Right.
Yeah.
So the concrete just
and
flying out of this
and and sometimes the rebarb was in the way, and so they had to push around it, and they had strings and boards and stuff that were mapping out where they were going, and it was quite entertaining to watch them go from one to the next. And then when they started to pour the garage, now they haven't poured our entire foundation
just
yet.
the garage so far.
But once they get all the support structures in place, then they do, pour the slab.
We'll have 5-inch concrete slab on top of this.
The support structure that we were talking about. Well, then they go in with the concrete truck, and it backs up to our the garage area, but it's having to come at an angle because there's piles of dirt that it's working around. And one of those piles of dirt was just right in the wrong spot, and they decided they could run over it with this big truck. The trouble is, you have the soft soil
on the other side.
So the big truck goes whoop.
The cement truck started listing more and more and more, and I seriously thought that cement truck was going to tump over. And I was like, this is not good. It did not tump over, but it listed quite a bit. And but they went ahead with the pour. They just worked around it, and they just left that listing. And at the end of the pour, they got a big truck to pull out the cement truck. But
and it was another example of what they do by hand, because since they couldn't get as close as they wanted to, because the truck was literally stuck in the ground,
couldn't move, so
they just did an extension, and the truck dumped the concrete, and then 7 or 8 people with shovels got the shovels, and as fast as they could pour the concrete through the chute, they were distributing it to the garage area.
Right.
I felt sorry for the folks working that day.
It was a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of hard work. I'll lay down right beside it and go to sleep, but but that was hard work.
The guys have worked very hard. The construction workers in Belize have a tough job. They work at long hours, but they put in the effort, like just incredible effort, and they do things by hand. Where in the States, so many different things would be done by machines, but here it's done by hand, and they don't complain. They're working, and I've been very impressed with the work ethics of the construction crews.
I have to say, though, you do see them sometimes lounging around.
They deserve that lounge
But
time.
once you see how they're working when they're not lounging, you think, okay, everybody's got to rest and recharge.
Yes.
So I've been very pleased with the work ethic of the construction crew we have.
Absolutely. We've been running around the countryside trying to source material for our build. So a next or upcoming episode is going to be talking about finding the furnishings, the finishes for the house, the flooring, the doors, the windows, tiles, fixtures. So we'll talk about that at the next time. So we'll see you later.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe.